What's going on, FA Nation? Happy Thursday. One more day until the end of the work week. We have a 4-game slate to break down. I am James Grande. Over on the other side of the screen, we have Adam Ronis. Adam, what's going on, brother?
What's up, man? Getting ready for this 4-game slate, and we're waiting on a lot of news.
Yeah, it's always the worst when there are just a handful of games and you don't know what's going on with the games. Primarily in Toronto, we don't know if not only Serge Ibaka and Fred VanVleet are going to play, we also could potentially see the return of Marc Gasol. So we're waiting on a whole bunch of news out of Toronto. We know Philly's already banged up, and we do have a return tonight. I don't know if you saw the Twitter post, but Stephen Curry made it abundantly clear that he is back. 24 to 28 minutes, somewhere in that ballpark, is what he's expected to play tonight. You and I just kind of speculated before, like, is Stephen Curry, and I know they're out of it, but, like, if he's like, hey, coach, I'm feeling good tonight, I don't think they're going to pull him off the floor.
Yeah, I would think so, too, especially if he's playing well. There's no issues with the hand. I would think that they just let him go. It's a home game. The crowd's going to be excited. It's a rematch of last season's NBA Finals, even though the teams are completely different, right. Especially on the Golden State side, and even Toronto with no Kawhi. So, yeah, I mean, I think people are just going to be excited to see him back.
I think this Golden State roster is better than last year's Finals roster. What do you think?
No question about it.
Agreed. Let's go over just the Vegas totals for tonight. Denver-Charlotte, definitely the worst game total on the board. 207. Denver now 10-point favorites on the road. I think even though they came coming off an ugly loss at home against Golden State, where they were favored by about 16, I believe, in that game. We have the Clippers-Houston, the first part of the TNT doubleheader. 236.5. Clippers 1-point favorites on the road, which I think is interesting, but full-strength Clippers haven't lost to any games this year. The team has not lost a single game when they have been at full strength. Toronto Golden State, 226 is our late night hammer. And then Philly-Sacramento, 218.5. Sacramento 5-point favorites. Toronto 9-point favorites in that game. Adam, if someone was relying on you right now, they said, Adam, I need my kid to go to college. You need to tell me the best bet of the night. What are you hammering home?
I don't love anything tonight. I put one bet out on Wager Alarm today, and I took the over at the time, 225 Golden State Toronto. I think Curry's going to boost the offense. They've scored at least 110 points in 3 straight games. And Toronto, even though they're ranked second overall in defensive efficiency for the year, their last 2 games, the totals, I think, have been 251 and 237. And I think part of that is they're just not full strength. They're running up and down the court a little bit more. And even if Ibaka and VanVleet are back, I still think this is going to be a high-scoring game. So that's my favorite play of the night. I think Clippers-Rockets is just too close to call. That actually opened up with the Rockets favored by 1. So all the money's going in the Clippers' direction. That concerns me. There's no way you can trust Denver on the road right now.
Right.
-10, as bad as the Hornets are. And the Kings -5 against the Sixers is not terrible because the Sixers are just so shorthanded. And the Kings have been playing very well. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's a real close game. So really not loving anything tonight. But I did put money down. I think I have over 225 in the Golden State-Toronto game as part of a parlay. I did take the Denver money line as well. They burned me the other night, but I'm going right back there. And I think I also got it a little bit later on at 225.5 on DK Sportsbook. So it seems like that number is going up.
I think the Kings -5 is interesting because 7-3 over the last 10, and Philly has been terrible on the road this year.
Even when full strength.
Even with Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, doesn't matter. Terrible on the road. But we do have 4 games to break down, Adam. Let's hop into Sean Mitchell's playbook today of the 4-game slate. We have at the top of the point guard position, we already mentioned Steph Curry, $8,000. I think we should just go to him because he is the talk of the town tonight. Are you sipping the Steph Curry Kool-Aid at 8K, knowing that there is a kind of a floor of 24 minutes and a ceiling of potentially 28, 29, 30?
I'm leaning no. We got several high-priced guys. I think the Rockets-Clippers game is very appealing. Right. So, a lot of the Toronto news is key. And unfortunately, on FanDuel, you're just not going to have that. So you're going to have to make some guesses. But I'm leaning no.
Yeah, and I think if you're a multi-entry kind of player, I think you definitely get exposure because, again, we know the guy can score in bunches, and very fast. Even if he's playing short spurts on the floor, it's Stephen Curry. People quickly forget that he's one of the best players in basketball. But like you mentioned, there are top-priced guys. One of them being Russell Westbrook in that Clippers matchup. He has been terrible against the Clippers this year. Primarily due to Patrick Beverley, and these two have a very long history, one that turned into a torn meniscus in the playoffs for Russell Westbrook. Does Patrick Beverley and his defense scare you at all? Russell shooting 38% against the Clippers this year.
A little bit, but he's been playing way better lately. And the thing is, I kind of lean if I'm going to spend on Harden, especially on FanDuel. Shooting guard is a problem tonight. So that's kind of the decision you have to make. And then again, it's FanDuel. You might be able to fit in everyone. We've seen that happen a lot lately. But yeah, I'm fine with Westbrook if you have the money to pay up. I think when I look at point guard, especially on FanDuel, Kyle Lowry at 7,300, especially if VanVleet is out. Again, I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. Golden State's defense isn't any good. They're 28th in defensive efficiency against the point guard position, and Steph Curry is not going to help improve that with his defense. Lowry's going to be asked to do a lot and carry this team. Lowry's going to play 37 to 40 minutes. I don't think this is going to be a blowout. Toronto's been struggling a little bit lately. I actually think Golden State getting 9 is not that bad either, although I didn't go with it. But, yeah, Lowry at 7,300. He's too pricey, I think, on DK, at 8,600. If you knew all those guys are out, then maybe. But even so, I'd rather spend up on a couple other guys. But Lowry at 7,300 on FanDuel is just too cheap.
Yeah, it stands out. One of the more fair price points you're going to see on this slate. And I actually think 8,600 isn't bad because on a 4-game slate, you're trying to differentiate somewhere. Not many people are going to pay 8,600 for Kyle Lowry, but the guy has gone for 50 plus fantasy points a lot of the last 10 games. So I do think that is a difference if there is no Ibaka VanVleet. We do have De'Aaron Fox also in the playbook. 7,600 on FanDuel, 8,000 on DraftKings. Tournaments, cash games, could you see yourself playing Fox in both?
Yeah, I think with tonight's slate, I think you can. He's been a little bit banged up, but he's playing through it, and he's been pretty good lately. Sacramento's still in the playoff hunt there for that 8th seed out west. So we've seen the usage go up the last few games. So, yeah, I'm okay with Fox tonight as well.
Yeah, I think that's an important point to bring up, that Sacramento is only 3 games back of Memphis. So they're going to play their guys all the minutes they can handle, and as long as the shoulder is okay for Fox, he's going to be on the floor. Shake Milton is the last point guard that Sean has written down. And look, we saw him score 39 actual points in a game. We saw him hit 14 consecutive threes over a span of 3 games. And let's just face it, there's nobody in Philly. Al Horford, as decent of a all-around player as he is, he's not really a scoring threat. Tobias Harris is not really proving to be that go-to number 1 option. Milton is, I think Milton's a really good price tag on FanDuel at 5,400 for tournaments. Considering he's producing in fantasy, he's producing real-life baskets. I would consider Milton here. Let's move over to shooting guard. And you mentioned James Harden. Probably safe to say he's the top spend up of the slate.
Well, especially on FanDuel, you have to start the 2 shooting guards, man. It's just looking at what's on that slate tonight, it's just really tough. I put him in the starting 5 video. He's had some big games against the Clippers this year, 2 games of over 60 fantasy points. I think he's averaging 40 points against them. So I know he's been kind of hit or miss lately, but at home, this is a big game for the Rockets to kind of show that they can continue to play against the better teams with this small ball lineup, and especially coming off a ridiculous loss against the Knicks.
To further your point on how bad shooting guard is on FanDuel, The next two highest priced players, Fred VanVleet, currently questionable at 6,100, so 5.1K cheaper than Harden. Devontae Graham, currently questionable, 5,900. And that takes us to Buddy Hield, who is the next highest price option, and Sean actually has him in the playbook. I've been talking on the podcast with John, and every time we've seemingly done the podcast lately, it's been a Kings slate. I hate the minutes the Kings are giving to Buddy Hield because he's producing, but he's capped, and they're just not playing him more than 25 minutes.
Yeah, and I don't understand it at all. I mean, they're winning games, so that's probably the way the coaching staff is looking at it, but It just makes no sense. This guy should be playing more minutes. So that's always the risk, but we are looking at a 4-game slate here, and he has tournament winning upside if he gets hot. But you just hate when you know that there's certain guys that just can't go past a certain amount of minutes, because we know how important it is to be on the court, especially on a 4-game slate. I mean, he doesn't play the minutes that you need, and even if he has a good game, it could result in you coming up a little bit short.
Right, and even if he gets hot, who's to say he even stays on the floor, because he's only playing 25 minutes anyway. If Fred VanVleet's out, Norman Powell lock and load, right?
Yeah, definitely. Lock and load. But the problem is I don't think we're going to have that news by lineup lock on FanDuel. So you're going to have to guess, and I don't even know which way to guess at this point.
I don't either, because I tried to speculate kind of in a similar situation the other night with Paul Millsap. I was very high on Michael Porter Jr. for tournaments. Why would the Nuggets play Paul Millsap against the Golden State Warriors at home in a 16-point spread? Well, they played Paul Millsap, right, and they got their asses kicked by Golden State at home. So it's very hard to just say, well, they're playing a bad team, so why would they play these guys? The NBA is crazy, and anything can happen on any given night. So probably tournaments only on FanDuel for Norman Powell. If you want to play him in cash games on DraftKings, you can always late swap. The rest of the point shooting guard position, I think Cody Martin becomes extremely intriguing if Devontae Graham is ultimately ruled out. We will get that news before a lineup lock, luckily. Very cheap across the industry, and he started last game, played a boatload of minutes. I think Cody Martin is pretty much cemented into a big role if Graham sits. I mean, Malik Monk's also suspended, so they don't really have anyone else except Joe Chile. Shout out to his mom, who I saw in Publix. And last shooting guard we have is Gary Harris on the flip side, who has been better. I think, honestly, we play Harris because, again, it's a scarce position over on FanDuel, and the minutes have been just super secure for Harris.
Yeah, that's basically it. It's the price, $4,400 on both sites, and it is a good matchup against Charlotte, but I think if this wasn't a 4-game slate, we probably wouldn't be talking about them. But, you got to find some money to save somewhere. And, those are two guys with Martin and Harris. If we don't have any Torontos, which we likely won't, you could pair one of them up with Harden and Cash.
That was probably the first time I said Gary Harris' name since maybe October or maybe November. Maybe I sprinkled in some Gary Harris love in November, but definitely not since the new year. Small forward is actually a pretty decent position tonight. I know Kawhi moves around. He's a power forward on FanDuel, but he's a small forward on DK. Sean primarily plays on DraftKings, so he has him written down here in the playbook, Adam. He is the top dog. I guess I'm curious to your opinion on the Clippers as a whole. We could just talk about Kawhi and Paul George here. I think Paul George is probably the better per dollar play, but I think a lot of people will also be thinking that same thing. So does that kind of make you more interested in Kawhi, kind of bob when everyone weaves?
Yeah, you could definitely go Kawhi in tournaments, and he'll probably have the lower ownership. Again, always difficult on a 4-game slate, and I got to think the Rockets and Clippers are going to be an appealing game stack, an appealing target. Obviously, it's kind of hard to stack with Westbrook, Harden, Kawhi, and George. But George, man, is just too cheap at this point. I mean, $6,900 on FanDuel, $7,400 on DraftKings, and people will look at the last 5 games. He's only reached 30 minutes one time, but I think a lot of that has been they've been blowing teams out. And this should be a competitive game. We talked about the line. Clippers only favored by 1. This could be a game where George finally gets 32, 33 minutes, and it'll be a high-paced game. Rockets play at the third fastest pace, and a lot of possessions here. So this should be a game where George should crush that value. I think, we're getting a superstar player here at this will be his lowest price we see him the rest of the year. So it's kind of hard to go away from him in a 4-game slate. But, you talk about game theory here on a short slate. Well, if so many people are going to have him, there's a chance that he only goes 5X. Yep. So if you fade him at that point and go with Kawhi who goes 7 or 8X, then yeah, you're in the driver's seat. So that's what you have to take into account since it's a short slate. But in cash, lock in Paul George.
100% agree if you're playing cash games. Scary playing cash games on a 4-game slate, but definitely agree. What's your thoughts on playing both of them in the same lineup?
I think, fine with it. But against the Rockets here, for sure. I think, they both could have, 32 to 35 minutes tonight because I do expect this to be a close game. I don't expect a blowout. So, I'm fine playing both if you can find a way to manage it.
Other small forwards we have listed here, Andrew Wiggins going up against Toronto. We mentioned Toronto's defense hasn't been the same. I mean, they just gave up a boatload of points to the Phoenix Suns, and I think the Nuggets were the game before where it was like 140 to like 130. So I don't think the Toronto defense is the same without their anchors and Ibaka and Gasol protecting the rim, and even VanVleet on the perimeter. And then we have OG Anunoby on the flip side of that game, who again is his, status is probably contingent on the status of VanVleet and Ibaka. So how are you approaching Anunoby, and do you like Wiggins at 7,900, which is not cheap, and 7,800 over on DraftKings?
Yeah, I don't like Wiggins for that price. I mean, maybe Curry helps him and he gets some easy baskets, but I'd rather either spend up to Kawhi, go down to Paul George, or even OG. But again, with OG, we're kind of guessing here with who's going to be active for Toronto. So you're just going to have to make your best educated guess. And if you guess right and all those guys are out and you have them in, you're in a good spot going up against Golden State where he's going to play big minutes.
Yeah, the steals and the peripheral stats have been amazing for OG. So I prefer to play him on FanDuel. But he's not going to get any ownership on DK. No one plays OG Anunoby over 6K. They just don't. So if you want to be a little low owned OG, look at OG. Some value options that Sean has written down here at small forward, Eric Pascal. 5,800 on DK is quite the hefty price tag, but then you look at his production, quite interesting. Obviously sans Stephen Curry, but there could potentially be no Draymond Green. More news, we're waiting for that from that game. Daniel House coming off a big game, and everyone loves to play scrubs in 230 plus totals, and Daniel House is exactly that. Maybe he's not a scrub, but on this team and in this environment, he certainly is. And then I think everyone's question is, which version of Glenn Robinson will we see? Will we see the Glenn Robinson prior to the complaints about him not playing because it was having a career year contract season? Or will we see the 76ers deploy Glenn Robinson again like they did against the Lakers, where he puts up all those fantasy points and won a lot of people some money?
Yeah, tough to kind of answer that right now. I mean, he's worth a shot just because he's so cheap. If you want to save at that second small forward position, assuming you're going to use Kawhi or George in one. Right. And the same thing with House, too. I mean, it is a good spot. He's been playing 30-plus minutes. I think both those guys are kind of viable to open up some salary to spend up on the big guys.
Yeah, and let's just say Pascal is only in play if Draymond Green sits. There's no way I'm touching 5,800 on DK if Draymond plays. Over at power forward, another, slight discrepancy. Pascal Siakam is a small forward on FanDuel. He is a power forward only on DK, even though he's been power forward center all year. Please get your together. I mean, at this point, it doesn't matter, right? I mean, FanDuel and Draft, they're not going to ever get to positions the same. It just is what it is. But he's the only real spend up we have here tonight at power forward. The next highest option is Al Horford. We have Horford. We have Covington in the environment, in the Clippers environment. Who do you like here between Siakam, Horford, Covington, all of them, none of them? Break that trio down, Adam.
Yeah, I like all of them. I mean, I would like Siakam much better if the,
Right.
Ibaka, VanVleet are out. If they play, I think he's still fine. but I don't know if I want to pay that much. I definitely like Horford, especially on FanDuel at 6,300. He's been playing more minutes. He'll play into the 30s. And even the last two games against the Lakers and Clippers, he still had decent lines. And now it's a better matchup against Sacramento. He's going to get the boards. He'll get some assists. His usage rate is 20% without Embiid, Simmons, and Richardson on the floor. So definitely like him at his price. And Covington's fine too. I feel like, to me, it's like DraftKings never raised his price till recently. Like he was always sitting around 6K and like putting up big numbers every single night. I mean, he's key to what they do at this point. So yeah, in this spot, Covington's fine too. I mean, you can play, if you want, you can play a Horford Covington combo at the power forward position on FanDuel, and that'll save some money to allow you to get, a couple of the, if you want to go Harden and Kawhi.
Covington over the last two games, back-to-back double-doubles, 46 and 50 fantasy points in a great environment. I do love Covington. And Horford, slow and steady, very steady, gets a very foul-happy Kings front court and Harry Giles, Nemanja Bjelica, and Alex Len, who all rotate at center at times. There aren't many power forward value options. Jalen McDaniels has been playing more minutes in Charlotte lately. Charlotte, I think, is just testing things out. They're starting Cody Zeller again tonight over Bismack, who started the last three games. Like, they're a total mess. But McDaniels has been good. 23, like I mentioned, 23 or more minutes in three of his last four. And, I mean, I don't really see a scenario where he doesn't play 23-plus minutes. If they blow out, why is Jalen McDaniels not on the floor? And then, he showed in a competitive atmosphere this last time out against the Spurs, he played 27 minutes anyway. So I think McDaniels is an option. I also want to just throw Mike Scott, his hat into the ring, $3,800 over on DK. We know Mike Scott to be not the best player in the NBA, obviously, but he played 36 minutes last game. Back-to-back double-figure scoring outputs, back-to-back 28 or more fantasy point games. And now, again, you mentioned it with Al Horford. I mean, he's getting the same Kings matchup, so I don't think we should just write Mike Scott off 3,800. Do you have a preference between those two values?
Yeah, Scott.
Agreed. I lean Scott. I think McDaniels is fine. I really do think McDaniels could. There's a path to like 30 fantasy points, especially in a blowout. But I do lean Mike Scott, who is starting. Finally, at center position, Nikola Jokic, clear-cut number one option here at center. It's Charlotte. We love attacking. Ad nauseum, we attack Charlotte centers. Cody Zeller is the reason why. Like, the primary reason we started attacking Charlotte centers was Cody Zeller. Bismack is obviously a better defender. Not starting tonight. And then, Willie Hernangomez, ex-Nick Great, is coming off the bench. So Jokic, pretty elite spend up, and I think he's probably the lowest owned star of the slate. I don't think anyone plays him because you mentioned everyone when we were talking about it earlier, right? You rattled off Westbrook, you rattled off Harden, you said Kawhi, Paul George. There was no mention of Nikola Jokic in there. I think Jokic could be sneaky as kind of a low end stack. Maybe not so much on FanDuel, but I think on DraftKings, where there are multi-position eligible players, you can get Jokic at a lower ownership. And then the rest of the position, he has Montrezl Harrell in his playbook, 6,500 on DraftKings, 57 on FanDuel. Marquise Chris, who is probably another guy contingent on the status of Draymond / Kevon Looney. Bismack, I find very interesting in the playbook. And PJ Tucker, $3,700 on DraftKings in a 237 total. Any guys of those four stand out, or anyone else at the center position stand out to you, Adam?
Nah, Sun is terrible tonight, man. I on FanDuel, I find that a lot of nights on the shorter slates. So yeah, I think you're right. Jokic on DraftKings, he'll have ownership because it's a 4-game slate, but probably way lower. And he's certainly capable of a triple-double tonight. Great matchup here against Charlotte. Harrell, the Rockets won't have much size. So if he can get the 28, 30 minutes at 5,700 on FanDuel, he'll probably fit a lot of people's bill tonight where they're getting, a Harden, Kawhi, George. So he could be popular. I think Chris is interesting. He's been playing very well. I wish the minutes were a little bit higher. I'd like to see him get to 30, but he's been good. And especially if Ibaka and Gasol are out, he could have a good game. So he's very interesting in tournaments. Tucker, I know he's 3,700, but man, it's just
he stands in the corner. He
does. I know. It's usually if we're talking about any player, we're like, oh, he's playing 35 minutes in a total of 237. Oh yeah, get him in there. Right. PJ Tucker, man, he might get like 8 rebounds and 2 points. So that's the problem. But DraftKings is much tougher with the pricing. That's a guy that might fit the bill to get in what you need. On FanDuel, I don't think you need to do it, man. It's just you don't need to go there.
I think you're right, and I think Tucker could actually be in play. I don't think if I'm building one lineup, I am not including PJ Tucker in that one lineup. But if I'm playing 5+, I might have Tucker in 1 of 5, or if I'm playing 20, I might have Tucker in 3 or 4 or 5 of 20, just because it's salary saver. I do want to ask you, he has Bismack, and it's a revolving door at center for Charlotte. They have 3 guys they can potentially roll out for 25 minutes. Zeller played last game. He started last game. He played 19 minutes. He put up 20 fantasy points. Bismack comes out, plays 22 minutes, 25. Actually, he had a DMP in that game. So I personally think that there is some merit to playing Willy Hernangomez in tournaments. Not that Willy Hernangomez is the best player in the world, because he's a dreadful defender, and that's probably the reason why he can't stay on the floor for any team he plays for. But Willy Hernangomez is a very good scorer around the rim, and he's a very good rebounder around the rim. Put up 37 fantasy points against Milwaukee in just 20 minutes, and it's a short slate. It's a really cruddy position. Any of these Charlotte centers stand out, or is it just a wash and just play Jokic and Harrell and PJ Tucker?
Yeah, I don't want to play any of them just because I just don't know how the minutes are going to be distributed. I understand the premise of the 4-game slate, taking a shot. That's if you're playing, like you said, 20 lineups. Maybe you get them in 1 or 2, but otherwise, there's been no consistency with how they're distributing the minutes, and kind of just experimenting now anyway.
I want to talk about consistency. One more guy I want to bring up, and that's Chris Boucher from Toronto. If there's no Ibaka and there's no Marc Gasol, we saw Boucher actually start the second half of that game. 29 minutes, 19 and 15 with a block and 2 steals for 45.75 DK points. It is Golden State has the clear matchup advantage against the Warriors front court. It's a nice paced game. Any love for Boucher, maybe on DK in tournaments, if you're multi-entering on FanDuel, maybe you throw him in 1 or 2?
I like him a lot. I just don't understand why he doesn't get more minutes. I think I've added and dropped him in my season league this year. When they had the injuries early, this is going to be his opportunity. And it doesn't happen. Look at 29 minutes last game, 9 against the Nuggets, 16 against the Hornets. So, I don't know what they're doing. Just because he had a good game last game, that doesn't mean he's going to play 20-plus minutes. So, look, he's worth taking that shot on just because we saw the upside last game. If you get that at his price, you're going to be in good shape tonight because he's going to have low ownership. And especially since we probably are not going to know what's going on with Toronto. Right. That is going to lower it even more. So, yeah, if you, one lineup, no, you're just taking a major risk. But there's definitely the upside there. And with Golden State and inside, this could be a matchup. But I wouldn't be surprised if he played 12 minutes also.
Oh, God. Coaches are just too smart for us, huh, Adam?
And it's hard to criticize Nick Nurse. They've had a great year.
I know. They've had such a good year. And, they just keep getting rid of DeMar DeRozan's gone. Then the next year, Kawhi Leonard's gone. And they just keep winning. They just keep churning out great teams. That about does it. 6:29. We'll be in the subscriber chat for the next 30 minutes. Sean Mitchell's lineups are out. Sean Mitchell's playbook's out. Adam, your starting 5 video is out. Big shout out to Matt Sells for producing, and we'll catch you guys next time.